And welcome. Raise Your Inner Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking all things inner game. Tuesdays are for sports and sports parenting. Fridays are for everything and everybody. So how are you today? How are things with your inner game? Are you feeling good or stressed out, worried? What's going on for you? For me, I will say, not that great. And you can tell, excuse me, last week I thought I might have a cold. This week I definitely, clearly have a cold, as you can hear. And it's really been kicking my butt. I mean, I spent one whole day this week like I was basically 12 years old again, just lying on the couch, bored out of my mind, not sleeping, too tired to do anything, not interested in reading, just lying there, blah, watching hours of shows on my iPad. It was miserable. I spent 2 nights in a row sleeping on that couch so I wouldn't wake up Margaret with my coughing. Been up and around doing things since then, so it's better. I feel better than I sound. But it's still not great. And of course, everything else is affected by that, right? Everything's hard. Eating too much, can't exercise, hard to focus on work, blah, blah, blah. So that's me right now. Hope you're feeling better than that. So some things to talk about today, my ups and downs for the week. We're going to talk about personal accountability again, personal accountability and its moral imperative. The George Santos arrest, that's interesting. My favorite mental game quote, we'll touch on that one again. Some thoughts on teens' mental health, our self-care challenge again, and our recommended items for the week. Got a great new show to talk about. So I'll start with ups and downs. What things were lifting me up this past week? What things were pulling me down and making life harder? In the ups column for me this week, the big one happened just 2 nights ago. David Sedaris, the author, came and spoke in our little town. Remember, our town has less than 5,000 people. We're not that close to anything, really. And we just get the most amazing people coming here. Paula Poundstone's been here a couple of times. I saw her. Butch Vig, the famous musician, music producer, is actually from here. He brought a great show here a couple years ago. Cloud Cult, another amazing band there. Main focus of that band. He lives here, actually. Moved here a while ago. Has put on some of my all-time favorite shows. Ani DeFranco is coming soon. I just don't understand it. But it's great. And David Sedaris was amazing. I laughed so hard. I forgot how funny he is. I also sort of forgot how great it is to laugh like that. It's such a wonderful thing. I started to check out some comedy shows on Netflix for a while, but I didn't honestly laugh that much. You know, you can find something funny and still not necessarily laugh out loud, so I didn't keep up with that. But the other night, I was dying. I really was, and it was great. He's so outrageous, you know, part of you is laughing from the shock of it. But the best part is that even with all that, there's a real love and acceptance of people underneath it. And it's just a huge heart. It seems like you can't tell, but he feels genuine with that. He genuinely loves and accepts people. And that takes the whole thing to another level for me. It was just wonderful. On top of that, we had a ton of family come down from Minneapolis for the show. We probably had 12 people in town visiting. And that added another whole level of connection and enjoyment to it, though with my cold, it wasn't maybe as good as it could have been. But still, the whole thing was great. I'm planning to pick up another David Sedaris book here soon. I haven't read one of his for a really long time. But I definitely will now again, because I just love him. He's great. Anyway, that was my up, and it was a pretty good one. The down, I'm not even going to say any more about it, because you know what it is already. It's my goddamn cold. Enough about that. All right, those are my ups and downs this week. Next up, our quote of the week. All right, our quote of the week. This week we will hear from Mahatma Gandhi. I love quoting Gandhi because I think it makes me sound so enlightened and progressive. Excuse me. Gandhi, of course, just an iconic historic figure, a great leader, courageous, used nonviolent resistance to help India gain independence from Britain in 1947. There's a great movie about him, if you haven't seen that. Anyway, his quote this week is, "It is wrong and immoral to seek to escape the consequences of one's acts. It's wrong and immoral to seek to escape the consequences of one's acts. This seems so relevant for us today. I'll talk about this more in the top stories, but we're seeing more and more of this, especially in our politics. And I think this might be a main part of what makes it feel to me like things are just coming apart at a deep level. People don't own their mistakes. They just don't. They don't admit it or acknowledge or apologize for anything. They double down, they lie, they gaslight, they point the finger elsewhere. They just seem to have stopped caring about the things that have always seemed to me like the absolute non-negotiable bedrock of being a responsible adult. Honesty, integrity, accountability. They just don't seem to care about any of that anymore. No shame whatsoever. And then on top of that, of course, their followers don't care either. No one's taking responsibility for their actions, and they're not being held accountable. It just boggles the mind. So what I love about this quote is that he goes right to the heart of it. It is wrong and immoral to do this. It's not just my personal whiny sense of things. It is the truth, the moral truth. We can completely disagree on fundamental issues and still be honest and fair and accountable about it. In fact, that's probably the only way we can disagree in a way that moves things forward. Otherwise, it's just posturing and conflict and struggle, which is kind of where things feel right now. Anyway, I've said a lot about this lately because there's so many opportunities to do so. But again, I just love this quote because it called it out so clearly from someone who has such a clear and powerful voice on the subject. So that's our quote this week. It is wrong and immoral to seek to escape the consequences of one's acts. Mahatma Gandhi, thank you. Next up, top stories. All right, top stories. This week, speaking of accountability, there are two bright spots that I'm feeling very good about. The first is the arrest yesterday of George Santos, the congressman who just made up pretty much his entire biography. Just the worst imaginable sort of con man. Pathological, really. And then, of course, the finding against Donald Trump for sexual assault and defamation of E. Jean Carroll. We just talked about how wrong it is for people to not take accountability and also for them to not be held accountable. And I've complained about that with these two guys, a lot. And now, twice in 1 week, we actually got some accountability. Now, of course, they're still not taking it themselves, right? Continuing to lie because they're just deeply broken and dangerous people. And their followers are still not even believing it. A jury of 9 people in Trump's case listened to the evidence, the facts, the law, found him liable. His followers can somehow still say, I don't believe it. He says he didn't do it. I believe him. I mean, you just can't get your head around it. But still, that's not a surprise. And it's not keeping me from bringing some balance back to the universe. Donald Trump was found liable in a court of law. George Santos was arrested for many different, pretty serious crimes. The guy is a grifter. They're all grifters. Wire fraud, money laundering, false statements. Just a crook. And they got him, at least at this point, at this phase. And of course, there's still more to do. Trump's still got a lot to be held accountable for. Santos is still in the Congress and running again, and the trial will take a while. But it's still great news, and I'm happy about it. Good news, full stop. All right, that's my top stories this week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Inner Game Gold. These are the ideas and the concepts I come back to over and over to help me stay on track. This week we're going to return to one of the greats, one of the Inner Game foundations, and sort of continue the Zen theme from last week. Last week we told the Zen koan about the two monks, and the punchline, brother, I sit her down back there. Why are you still carrying her? I love that. This week we're talking again about my favorite, be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. I just finished up with another Sports Academy student this week. She was just amazing, the difference the program made, how well she did with it. And when she talked about specific moments and how things were different now, it was exactly this. It was perfect. She plays beach volleyball. Beach volleyball. I got my V and my B mixed up there. And she said, I'm paraphrasing, but she basically said, I get these moments. Maybe we lost a point, or I made a mistake, or I'm just thinking about how strong the opponent is, whatever. And I used to get stuck in my head thinking about all that kind of stuff, whatever it was. But now I notice the thought come up, and I say, nope, not now, and it's done. Just like that, I'm back, I'm focused, I'm playing with so much more confidence and energy now. And people are noticing, my coaches, my parents, my teammate, it's just been great. So that's a great story, but linked to what we're talking about. Think about her experience, the moment she described. Before, the negative thoughts would come up, and they would take over. They would pull her into her head, and she didn't know how to get back out. That is being mastered by mind. Your brain is dictating what you think about and when, and it's totally normal. That's how it goes for most of us most of the time, but it is an absolute killer for peak performance. But now, for her, the thoughts come up. She says, nope, not now, and she is instantly out of her head and focused and present. That is being master of mind. She is deciding now what she thinks about and when. She's completely mastered it. It took her only 2 weeks to get there, and it makes all the difference in the world. Now, most of us are not athletes. We don't feel the need for that kind of focus every day. But if you take a look at what's going on in your inner game from day to day, you'll see that pretty much everything that makes you feel basically bad about how things are going, about what kind of person you're being, it's because of the exact same thing, moments just like this. So anyway, once again, that's why this piece of Inner Game Gold is so helpful and powerful. The whole story of how things are versus how we really want them to be is right there and could not be more clear. Be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. Once that clicks for you and you really get how to put that into action in your life, it's just night and day. So write that one down. Come back to it now and then. It is absolute gold. And that is our Inner Game Gold this week. Next up, raise your outer game. All right, so here's where we talk about the things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. And this week I want to talk about teens' mental health. And I have to be careful about this because I'm not a trained mental health expert. I only know what I see in myself and in the people I work with. So nothing I say is official mental health advice, but I still think there's some things worth sharing. So this has been on my mind, and actually it's on my mind all the time now because of the coaching I'm doing and also the assessments I see. The assessment we use in our training is also available to the public, you might already know, as part of our Mental Game Starter Kit. So athletes are submitting those all the time. And some of them are good and solid. The kids seem to be doing well. It's great to see. But most of them are not. It's interesting and actually kind of sweet, really. But no matter how rough some of the results look, no matter how much they're struggling with confidence and worry and self-esteem, they still score high on happiness and being proud of being an athlete. I actually love that. But it also says to me that the adults in their lives very likely do not know how much they're struggling because they're generally still happy kids and they want to keep playing, right? And that's most of what we see. But there's a lot more going on in there, and they are frequently really struggling. The assessment has questions like, I worry about what people will think of me. I worry about letting people down. And the answer will be almost always. There's a question, I wish I was less stressed out and worried. And the answer is almost always they feel that way. There's a question, I feel good about myself as a person. I feel good about my contribution to the team. And the answer will be sometimes or almost never. Think about that. A lot of these kids, too many, are struggling at a pretty deep level. And it's for different reasons. My post from earlier this week, my Tuesday sports-focused post was called, "Can we please stop subjecting our kids to asshole coaches?" Because I just started working with another kid who, his major mental game problem is that his coach is such a jerk, which just pisses me off. But there are many different causes of the struggles. But the bottom line is, as great as sports are for kids, they also add a big emotional load to their lives. And it's not something we can always see. So how can you tell? And what can you do about it? Again, not professional advice, just some things I've observed. One big one that sounds obvious that I think we miss is, are they having fun? I mean, it's so simple. But if they're having fun, that tells you a lot. And you can see that. What do they say about game day? What do they look like? What's their posture like? Especially as kids start to get a little older, we start to think, well, it's not necessarily about having fun anymore, right? It's more serious now. And that's true at one level. But the reality is, if they're having fun, by definition, they're also playing at their highest level. The single most common comment I get, or that a kid will agree with when I ask them, is, do you have more fun in practice than on game day? And pretty much 100% of the time the answer is yes, absolutely. Huge difference. But then when I ask them, what difference would it make if you could have that kind of fun on game day? Just the concept kind of blows their minds. They're like, oh man, that would change everything. So that's one good thing to look for. Are they actually having fun competing in their sport? Another is have them take our assessment. It really does a good job of revealing their inner experience as an athlete. It breaks their mental game into 8 distinct areas and assigns a number to each one. And every kid who takes it says, yeah, that sounds about right. So I might want to have them do that too. If you're not on our list, just sign up from the homepage, follow the instructions. Just takes a few minutes. It's very helpful. In some cases, especially if they're not in sports and it seems like they really are carrying a burden, most of the time, it's probably smart to have them talk to somebody. Our daughter, she's 14 now, saw somebody a few times this year, and it really helped her a lot. She had a couple of things she was struggling with, and the therapist was able to give her a fresh perspective on them and some practical things to do, and it was great. And yes, it's possible that I or Margaret might have had some similarly helpful suggestions. But kids just don't hear those things from us, right? From their parents. They discount our encouragement because we always say things like that. They, of course, don't think we understand what's going on for them, which might be true. So even if we do feel like we totally get what's going on for them and can help, it's probably still better to have them hear it from someone else. If a child is in sports and they're 13 or older, again, I can't make official mental health claims. I want to be clear about that. But I do see how much happier and more confident and relaxed and less stressed kids are, and the huge difference in their assessment scores after the 6-week, huge difference in their scores. So I would definitely encourage you to check out the Sports Academy program for them. Bottom line is, and I apologize for the sound of my throat, this is just nuts, but we're going to keep plugging away. There are a lot of things we can do to help a kid who's struggling, but we need to be paying attention and understand that, especially for kids in sports, or really any high-pressure activity. Music can be like that, academics for sure. Could be all kinds of similar things. There's a good chance there's more going on for them than we're seeing. So does it seem like they're having fun? Or does it maybe seem like they're carrying too much of a load? There's a lot we can pick up on when we're looking for it. And of course, we want to do everything we can to help, because not only is it a bummer to be feeling like that, and it feels terrible as a parent to know they're struggling, but it also keeps them from doing their best and getting the most out of their experience. So it's good and important, and I encourage you to put some good focus on it. All right, next up, our charging station challenge. Okay, last week we had you do the very gentle self-care challenge, in part because I was feeling the need for some self-care myself. And since I'm still feeling that need, I think I'm going to extend it for you for another week as well. I like to follow along with the challenge each week. And I don't much feel like doing anything more myself, so there you go. One more week. Self-care challenge. At least one time this week. Do something extra special and restorative for yourself. The kind of thing you would do if you felt like you really needed it. Okay? You deserve it. Do something nice for yourself, and I'll try to do the same. That's it for this week's challenge. Charging Station Challenge. Next up, highly recommended. All right, highly recommended. This is things I'm crazy about right now or just reviewing. So this week I have a new show that I'm really loving. It's on Netflix called The Ambassador. I heard this recommended on a podcast, and I checked it out, partly because the show I mentioned last week, White House Plumbers, only had one episode available. It seems like most of the time now, a new show will have a few episodes available at the beginning so you can get hooked on it, and then they'll back off to once a week. But this one only had the one, so I went looking for that show, got stumped. I remembered the other show, checked it out, and I really liked it right away. So the main character is this woman. She's super smart, diplomat, gets thrust into being U.S. ambassador to England, which she really doesn't want to do. But there's a crisis, and they really need her help. I always like political thrillers, and it's basically that. But the other element is that her husband is a famous diplomat in his own right, who's also very controversial. Their marriage is very complicated. The situation is complicated by their marriage. It's just a very interesting mix of politics and spies and relationships that I'm really enjoying. So that's my new pick for the week. An update from last week, the Dark Angel book I mentioned from John Sanford. That's going well, enjoying it. Exactly what you want from a book like that. Still highly recommended for that one. Obviously can't say more about the White House Plumbers yet, but hoping to have an update on that soon. And those are the recommendations for this week. And of course, that is it then for this week's show. If you like what you heard, in spite of the cold and the nasty throat, I'm so sorry, please do tell your friends, invite them to join us, and rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It helps new folks find the show and get the mental game charge we all need. If you have teenagers in sports, talking about that a lot today, check out our Mental Game Starter Kit. It's a great set of resources to get you started on the path of helping your child boost their mental game. Just go to raiseyourinnergame.com, scroll to the bottom, you can learn about it and register there. All free, of course, super helpful. If you'd like to support the show so we can keep things ad-free, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link below, and thank you for that. For more mental game goodness, please join our free community, the Raise Your Inner Game Charging Station. Click the link here. It's totally free. You will love it. Also, if you're listening to this on audio but you like video, we post all our episodes on our YouTube channel as well. There's a link to that in the show notes. And finally, we'll close with Leo Tolstoy, again from the Raise Your Inner Game book. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. That's what we're doing, folks. We're serving the people in our lives. It's super important. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time.